People are talking about the death of doubles, and is this the start of the end? We've had the change, with the mixed doubles at the US Open. We had big chats earlier last year where people were talking about the Premier Tour coming out, and it was only going to be singles. And it feels like there's a little bit of momentum right now, and I guess that's what we're trying to address a little bit today. So, what do you see? Where do you see this all fitting right now? One, from a professional level, and secondly within the ecosystem of the wider tennis industry.
Yeah, it's kind of a question I've been trying to answer since 2022, I guess, when I created those t-shirts with Gabby, like I talked about earlier. The yeah, it's just never made sense to me that doubles isn't more popular than it is. So I guess the question is like, where are we now, and where could it go, and where do we think it's actually going to go? So right now, I feel like doubles is an underserved market, I guess is one way to phrase it. They the tours have mostly neglected. I think doubles is a fair word. Maybe it's slightly harsh, but I don't think by much. Over the last several decades, and I think that that's one of the reasons that you're seeing it come to kind of the forefront right now. A lot of, we've had Opelka kind of go off about it. Then Roddick responded, then Wertheim responded, then it's on Tennis Channel. And a lot of these people, I talked about my story earlier, and I don't by any means have a traditional story to professional tennis or working with pro players or just the pro tours in general. And I think that gives me kind of a unique perspective on it, where I'm not quite as blindfolded maybe as if you've been in it for 30 years. And I think that a lot of people who have been in it for so long maybe don't have the vision to see where doubles could go. And maybe that makes me naive. I don't know. I'm looking for reasons that I'm wrong, but I haven't found any that make sense to me that really have changed my mind so far. But I feel like a lot of the people you talk to who have been in the industry for a long time think that doubles is a product that just people don't want to watch, and that it doesn't sell, and that it costs the tours money. And that's one of the reasons you're seeing Opelka and Wertheim and Roddick and these people say that, we don't need doubles. We don't need doubles specialists. And I think that's one of the questions we're going to have to answer is there a place for double specialists in the future of tennis? And I think there absolutely is, whether it's a part of the singles tour or its own separate tour or whatever. But I think it has to be delivered in the right way. And the current product is not being delivered in the right way, especially the TV experience, which we can get into as well. So I'm not sure if that answers your question exactly, but how do you feel? Where do you feel like we're at now, and what needs to happen?
I think a lot of this stuff can be talked around, and like I say, taking some of the comments, we don't need a next Rohan Bopana. It was actually Rohan that told me that last week. I was having lunch with him, and he was kind of
Mhm.
like, he was cracking up a little bit, but it's obviously quite offensive. Someone's kind of got to that stage. Just because people play doubles doesn't mean they want to watch it, just like one-on-one basketball. Coco, Van der Weer, and Prakash Amatraj chimed in. I don't think the double sells. I think there's a lot of these comments that are made, and I have respect for all of those people. And I think we just need to kind of get rid of that from a starting point would be one thing I would say, is like, it's not about the what, it's about the who, is the way that I would summarize that. Let's not try and pretend that it's the product. It's not the product. You put four Love Islanders who have got 1.5 million followers on social media on a court, they will sell tickets and people will come and watch them play singles or doubles, even though it'll be a pile of rubbish. Like my kids were at Wimbledon with me last year. They were more excited for the two that won the British Love Island show than they were about meeting anybody else. Like this is the way that the world has gone. So I think we need to be careful on that. I think we also need to be careful on saying that we need to get more singles players playing doubles. I know last week in Indian Wells, and eventually there was only 20 singles players, top 50 singles players, but in the original draw there was 27, male singles players, and on the female side there was 34. So we're talking about almost the majority of players in those doubles draws are actually what we call traditional singles players. So that's another one I think we need to kind of lose, because any singles player, any player can sign in any week, right? So the opportunities are there. So there's obviously a reason that they don't. There are certainly more so on the men's side and in the Grand Slams. So I think there's lots of different things that are put out there that are maybe just a bit ignorant. Now, what I'd like to do with you today, Will, actually is I think everyone should be heard. And I think yes, I coach 4 professional doubles players that are all making their living from that. And I guess technically me as a doubles coach right now, I am as well. But we are all part of one big traveling circus. We're all on the same team. That's another thing I think we need to get our heads around. The tennis industry, the tennis world, there's many different aspects to it. And, through both of our podcasts, we've had the opportunity to speak to lots of amazing people that play the different roles within the sport. And I think we need to try and think a little bit more as a team, actually. And we need to try and listen to different perspectives. And I guess my starting point for that is, where a lot of this boils down to is we have 7 governing bodies. And, those 7 governing bodies, and I'm not going to sit here and take a swipe at anybody that runs those different governing bodies, because we all live in our life with quite a blinkered way, right? It's quite hard to step out. So if we take Eric Budarak, who, I've got a lot of respect for Eric. Eric's job at the US Open is to have the most successful US Open brand that he can, and what does that entail? Well, that's going to entail commercial value. That's going to, what success measure will be, how much money they bring in, how many fans they bring, what broadcasting rights they have, the sustainability of the event. So when we look at, let's say, the mixed doubles situation in isolation, if you're just in your world of thinking of the US Open, I think it's probably a good move, in terms, and for those that don't know what I'm talking about, the US Open this year is the mixed doubles event will happen in week 1, the qualifying week, with 16 teams over 2 days. They've shortened the format. ESPN are on board. They've got big broadcasting rights, but 8 of those spots will go to singles players and 8 spots will go to wildcards, which, let's be honest, the majority will be singles players as well. So from that perspective, and if we maybe address that first, Will, from that perspective, I can see it. I can see it from the individual governing body standpoint. And, we'd like to think that people will think more about tennis and history and tradition and, all of these, the reason that we all got into this sport and the dreams and all of this. However, I can see it from that point of view, why the US Open would go that route with their product within